Hello everybody, I'm Ikezune, and in today's video we go over the hypest Loomians in Loomian Legacy. I don't mean the best Loomians, because of course viability doesn't always translate to hype and excitement. This definitive list goes over what gets the blood going, what gets the heart pumping the hardest. There is no disputing this list, as it is 100% factual. If you have a problem with that, let me know in the comments. I'll make fun of you for it. Anyway, let's get the list going strong. We've got Mutagon. Mutagon is an easy S tier here. I mean, those punches hitting so hard, and once you get a brawn boost up, you know that your blood is going. The opponent is sweating. There's just no competition. Easy S tier for Mutagon. Going off of this, we have Mocho. While it may not be the best in PvP due to a solo ice moveset, if it does get going with that sugar rush, you know things get going hard. A+ for that. I mean, the only thing holding it back from an S is it looks derpy. I mean, what else can I say? Moving on, we have Colossotrops, an easy S tier. The difficulty of using this Loomian paired with the huge damage output provides a near unmatched experience when running this Loomian. Up next, we have Duskit, another A+ Loomian. You never really see it, but that oppress plus mean-spirited, it really makes you really have a nice day. I mean, the opponent doesn't really enjoy being put to sleep, but that damage output with the oppress, it makes you feel something. Up next, we've got a Swolder. While it may not be A+ due to the stigma of stall, when you use this under Bane of Haste, oh buddy, does it make it feels great. It's such a good feeling to watch Swolder put in work, offensively at least. I mean, mega punching a Stratasaur, I mean, it's such a great feeling. An easy A tier. Again, the stigma's holding it back from the tippy top of the tier list. Up next, we have some of a weaker entry in the hype list. However, we have Garbantus. While he puts in work every game, it's pretty standard, and it's really been done over and over again. I mean, I'd give it a B- here. Not quite as low as some Loomians, but it's definitely not the most hyped Loomian we've seen. Moving on, I want to go over Himber. Now, Himber, a lot of people don't really like using in PvP due to its weaknesses. However, as of late, I've seen it put in some work, and boy, the work it puts in is lovely. An easy A+. Its stab combination, plus its attack stat is deceiving because the damage output from this thing could be unreal in some cases, and it's just a great Loomian to see put in some work. An A+ for me. Up next, I want to go over Metatode. Metatode having, a variety of sets it can run. It can be very bulky with lots of utility, or you can just crank it up its damage with Specialization Cycle Slap. In either way, the Toad gets the work done. A lot of people don't like the way it looks, but I love the way it performs. An easy A tier for me. I want to go over Joltooth next. I mean, A- for me. Initially, it looked like it was going to be a behemoth in terms of, what it could do. But, I mean, after looking at it, like Ambush and, its coverage, I don't feel the oomph that I feel from things above it, and that's why I have it as an A-. Moving on, I want to go over Deletrix. Deletrix, I feel, is near the same boat as Joltooth. It's offensively, it seems great, but I just don't feel it. It's water types just don't get you going, especially when you have something like Cephalops here. It's definitely I'm gonna put it in the C tier, near the bottom. It's just, in tournaments you see it everywhere. They just click Hypnotize, and it's just you feel nothing, and it's a really big reason why it brings a lot of water types down, in my opinion. Next, I want to go over Dyborg. You might have seen me move it, I don't know, but Dyborg, aka the People's Champion, a Loomian that nobody really uses, but it's definitely something that I like to see work. And when it does work, it's definitely something that is a pleasure to see. I wouldn't quite put it in the same level as these guys, but it's definitely a pleasure to see. Going off of that, we've got Ikezune here. Ikezune, I wouldn't put it nearly at the top. I don't feel like it fits in the same region as these guys, but it does put in a solid amount of work, and that work is definitely a pleasure to see. I mean, secret ability coming in on that Thunderstrike, ooh, feels great. Actually, the fact that that secret ability coming in for that late game feels amazing. And then not only that, we have Bane of Haste, and boy, is that the fear it puts on the opponent under Bane of Haste exquisite. And for that reason, I've actually decided to move it up to an A+ tier. Now, you may have seen that the C- tier is finally unlocked, so we can talk about some things that just absolutely kill the joy in the game, and you just never want to see it in a battle. And I don't need to drag this out. We all know what's going to go under there. I just need to find it yet. Stratasaur, honestly, the most lame thing in the game. When you see it, you just know you're going to fall asleep because of this thing is just so lame. It brings no joy to a battle ever. And going off of that, who's Waka Laka? I don't even remember. Metronet. Let's talk about Metronet. Metronet is a Loomian that doesn't get a lot of love. And in terms of hype, it's for a decent reason. I mean, like, it shares things it does with other Loomians, and well, it just doesn't stand out, and it really doesn't bring that much hype when it does work. And for that reason, I'm actually going to keep it in B tier. Unfortunately, it's just not a good hype man, if you get what I mean. Moving on, we have Cinemath, another thing that can go crazy late game if this lame thing of monstrosity didn't exist in our life. However, I'm only going to keep it in B+ because a lot of times it likes to put you to sleep before setting up. It doesn't like to play the risky game. Now, I understand that we've got Duskit, another sleep abuser, up in A+, but Duskit's sleep is a lot more offensive related with that mean-spirited than Cinemath. So that's why I put Cinemath in B+ rather than A+. Up next, I'd like to talk about Hunder. Now, while Hunder is a great offensive Loomian, it's another one of those offensive Loomians that kind of puts you to sleep because all it does is flinch you. I wouldn't put it quite the same level of sleepiness as Cephalops because Cephalops quite literally puts you to sleep, but Hunder is just not a very exciting Loomian. All it does is bite you and cause you to flinch, and if anything, the blood boiling in you is rage rather than hype. So, a C+ for Hunder. Moving on, we've got Vesper, another Loomian popular in the meta, and well, we've seen it 1,000,007 times. This thing's almost always good in any given meta, and well, it's becoming so used that it's just nobody likes seeing it anymore. It's, again, not the same level as Cephalops, but like Vesperatu, just it needs something new. We need something new from it before I put it up. Although it did get a ranged moveset, which I guess could be hype, but nobody's using it, so it's just like we don't rank it that way yet. Moving on, but with the same mindset, we've got Garlash. It's the same thing as Hunder, just bites you and flinches you. Although Vicious Snap doesn't flinch you, so I guess maybe no. It's still a C+. It's not a very hype Loomian. It just kind of bites you and flinches you, and well, power job busted, I guess. It's the same thing it's just another day in the office when it comes to Garlash. Eruptodon, on the other hand, with that Magnify, that fire damage, if they don't have a water type, oh buddy, you already believe that this thing gets the blood going, the heart pumping. We all understand what this thing does. Unfortunately, it just doesn't get to perform that very well because, well, a lot of the meta is a snooze fest, and that snooze fest just so happens to crap on Eruptodon's day. But when Eruptodon has a good day, we all have a good day. Maybe not the guy on the other end, but you know, they're irrelevant. We're here to have fun. Speaking about having fun, I want to talk about Eclipse, another crusader of no fun, because, well, Total Eclipse is no fun. And it being on every team is no fun. Moving on to something that I actually completely forgot about for a good reason. We've got Luxor, because you know what's hype? Damage. You want to know? And Luxor can do a lot of damage. And you want to know what else is hype? Getting walled by every single plant in existence. C-. Luxor, both in hype and in viability, you failed to make the cut. You failed to make the cut. I wish you would get good. And while I'm down here forgetting about the rats, let's get over the last rat. While more hype than Luxor because it can actually deal damage, it's still not that hype, honestly. It just... When you look at Umbra, you don't think hype. You think, oh boy, I'm walled by every bug type, and, well... I just don't... It's so plain and boring. But something that isn't boring, Icicle. You know why? Bane of Haste. Bane of Haste isn't boring. Bane of Haste is quite the opposite of boring. And the best setter the best setter of Bane of Haste has to do something. The only thing that would make this, what would raise this higher on the hype list, is suicide moves actually causing that parting gift to go off. Nothing would be better than, you know, healing your teammate while also throwing a bomb at the opponent. But alas, it doesn't do that, and for that reason I have to keep it in A-. Now I want to talk about something that nobody seems to appreciate, and for whatever reason I don't understand. Valkyrie. Valkyrie is one of the hypest Loomians when it gets going. One of the best wall breakers out there. Magnify, Raging Howl, Gamma Pulse, and then a Rejuvenate to keep itself alive. Always able to bring the damage, and the damage it brings is a chef's kiss. Chef's kiss. And then even if you run the secret ability, you swap in on something like Terrifying sets you off, and you go crazy. And it's just beautiful, beautiful. This thing, easy A+, easy A+. Next up, another magnifying Loomian, but not quite to the same level of hype as Valkyrie. We've got Iguana. I'm going to keep it in the B tier because while it can run magnify, it's just the design and what it does is just... It just feels plain. Like, you can't possibly look at Iguana and feel like it's more hype than something like Valkyrie. I've got to keep it in the B tier. It just needs something, that extra oomph to raise it higher. Now, adding on to the list of Loomians that would, when it gets going, it seems insanely hype. It's Munchwheel. Along with Eruptodon, while the meta makes it very, very, very bad, what it does at its core is something amazing and something we all like to see. Sweeping is always something that's very nice, unless you're something like Garbantus or even Zulong. But Munchwheel, on the other hand, that bulk up, rev up just feels amazing when it gets going, and well, it's no less than an A tier. It just can't be. But what can be less than an A tier is Nemore. Possibly the most boring Loomian that relies on sleep. I mean, you just sleep and then spam Peace of Mind. While that relates to something like Duskit, Duskit's a press and Mean-Spirited are on another level. Meanwhile, Nemore just Peace of Mind, Luster Loot, Hypnotize, Repeat. And except it's Hypnotize, and then those people that run Disperse Hypnotized. Now you're removing the accuracy, and we all know RNG is fun. And removing that is just lame. C tier for Nemore. And another C tier I'd like to add is Terraclaw. Nobody likes something that just swaps into everything. Nobody does, except if you're Owner Door. But if you're Owner Door, you're an automatic D tier. But Terraclaw just takes ranged hits, and it's annoying. It's not something that makes you feel good. It's just there. It's just annoying. So for that, I have to put it in the C tier. Now, Festifer's debut. It was something that we all, Bane of Haste users, or advocates, all loved to see. But then Colossotrops came out right after and kind of stole its spotlight. And boy, did it steal spotlight. While the tree is still something fun to use, it just cannot compare to something like Colossotrops. And for that reason, I put it in a B+. Up next, I'd like to talk about something that a Loomian that's had a very, very, very rough time since the time it came out, and only recently has it come to the light of actually being viable in PvP. And that viability also skyrocketed its ability to be hype. Volcaloa with that Brawn boost, another A tier up with the Reptidon Munchwheel pair. Brawn boost Volcaloa just brings you joy when you get it to work, because it's risen from the ashes that was, lack of viability. And now with that Brawn boost, it just strikes fear in the opponent, and that fear is satisfying. But you know what isn't satisfying? Constantly going to sleep. And, not only does Obsidragon go to sleep, it puts the rest of us to sleep as well. And, down there with Teclipse and Stratasaur, Obsidragon just follows suit. It's lame. Everybody knows this. But what isn't lame is pivoting. Pivoting's always been fun. And, probably the most hype pivot is Skellig. Skellig in this game, in this meta, isn't seen as very good. But Baffle as a move is always cool. And Skellig's kit overall, trolling and pivoting, it's definitely not, it doesn't bring the same levels of joy as everything above it, but it does get a good kick out of people when you do manage to troll around with it, and for that reason I put it as a B+. Speaking of trolling, we've got Ragoon. That burglar chase down, always stealing an item. This level of trolling, we generally don't like as much. It's not very hype. It's more on the annoying side, but at least I put it above these guys because, chase down burglars a lot more funny than, hypnotize and just walling things. So for that reason, I put it in the C+ tier. But when it comes to walling things, there's something in particular about Spreezy that is a lot more enjoyable than, Terraclaw or Garbantis or Stratasaur. And its level of utility, what it can do to you is different every game. It can talent trade, it can hypnotize, it can sap plant, it can poison barbs. It brings so much to the table than just walling. It has a lot of added utility, and that utility definitely pushes it up to something like A-. And here's something that offers no utility but just does damage, and that's Protagon. But Protagon, I'll definitely put it above Garbantis and Zulong, but I can't put it any higher than a B tier. It does the same thing every game, but at least I rate it higher than Zulong because, Zulong's been around longer, and for some reason people just can't pull themselves away from Zulong. Meanwhile, Protagon, it looks cooler, so yeah, it goes higher. Now, a weaker entry in the list, not only in hype but also damage, Arapago. It's fast, and that's all it has. It recently got access to Rejuvenate and Dark Surge, but even then, nothing is saving it from its weak output in both damage and excitement. So, it's definitely more hype than those below it, but I can't put it any higher than a B-. But what I can put higher than a B- is Borak. Borak's boast, it's literally bragging at the opponent. It's taunting you. Not provoking, it's taunting you. And it threatens massive damage output. And that coverage is lovely. Even though it's not as viable in today's meta as we'd like it to be, it still reigns true in our hearts as something that it's definitely more of a hype man, and for that reason I put it in A-. Now, Gasstroke is something, it's another wall, and walls generally are boring, but this wall has a bit of a gimmick when it comes to dealing with the one of the more boring things in existence, Cephalops, and that it denies Cephalops of that soul drain shenanigans because it actually hurts Cephalops, and for that reason I have to put it at a B tier. As a wall, again, it's not very hype, but again, gimmicks are fun, so a B tier for me. Now, while utility in general is received highly on the hype scale, Adorigo, for some reason, just doesn't really click. I mean, it's fast and it's got utility, but I personally don't understand it, but it just doesn't bring much hype to the table, and for that reason I've got to put it as a B-. Now, another Loomian that has a lot of utility is Gabademic, but we don't use it because we've got hot coverage and a hot speed tier and a hot typing. Ever since it's dropped Hypnotize off of its move list, it's been nothing short of great to see in battle, and for that reason, it's an A-. It's not as hype as the stuff in front of it, but for sure, it's not. We no longer fear Hypnotize when it comes to this Loomian because, well, it's got more fun options and people recognize that. Next up, I want to cover Wobbleisk. Now, a lot of people have been using it more defensively, but it's a Loomian that could run quite a lot of sets. And, however, when you're looking at it, you don't feel hype. You just don't. And I was going to put it B, but like, you just don't feel hype when it comes to Wobbleisk, and for that reason I have to put it as C+. I mean, it's just not something that gets you going, you know? Along with that, we've got Krakaloa. I mean, it's a wall that walls, and that's it. Now, I've got to put it as a C. It's just not something that's very hype in today, you know, very hype, and, well, unfortunately, it's a C tier for me. Now, another bulky fire. While it does damage, it just doesn't. It's the same thing as Krakaloa. I mean, like, it doesn't get you going. And Haganosh for me, another C tier, unfortunately. Now, another wall, but this time something that got updated as of late to actually become less passive. Ventation. Does the update fix it? No, it's still not something that I would consider hype, but I would consider it more hype than something like Krakaloa. So I'll put it in the C+ tier. Now I want to talk about Inferno X, and I want to say Inferno X is pretty much hard carried by its design. How far can it go? I'd probably give it a B tier. It looks cool, and it's a defensive pivot on offense. That's pretty much what's holding it over things above it, but that's as far as it can go in my opinion. A B tier. Looks great, works great, but in terms of like actual hype, no, I can't give it too much. Now, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about Terrafly, the OG Poison Barb Setter, the OG Ambush Abuser. While in today's meta, it just doesn't do anything, I still want to give it credit for where credit is due. It was still a great Loomian to use back in the day, and if it could be used today, it would definitely be something that brings a lot of hype to the table, and for that reason, it is an A- hype Loomian, in my opinion. Now, something that functions great in the current meta, but doesn't really bring much hype, is Chartiki. Chartiki is an excellent Loomian. It definitely was hype when it got buffed, but now that the buff is settled and it's just something we look at every day, but I'd still put it above something like Hunter, so B-. Now to talk about another buffed Loomian, Shachi. Shachi got that range attack buff back in the day. That Mystic Wand, it was something that struck fear in the opponent. Nowadays, not so much because we've got a lot of stuff to deal with it, but it's still small, but deals truckloads of damage, and that combination puts it as a B+ for me. Now I want to go to the opposite end of the spectrum, from small but nuke to large but passive. We've got Mawamurk. Mawamurk, when we saw Wild Isles leak, we all thought this is going to be great. Offensive water type. No, we got a fat, slow piece of lard. It's definitely one of the lamest Loomians we've gotten in the game, and I don't know if that will be able to change later down the line. C-. I mean, it's just boring. Now I want to talk about possibly the most passive Loomian in the game, Wiki. However, I'm not talking about it in terms of lame. This thing actually can do some stuff. Now, I'm not talking about, you know, throwing it on a stall team and calling it hype, but there's some hidden tech with this thing. And, I mean, it'd be a joy to see it work if people were to use it. But, again, the stigma behind stall is what's definitely holding it back. And for that reason, I've got to keep it in a B tier. I can't put it higher, or else the stigma behind it would those people would definitely go off, and you can't have people disagreeing with a factual list, and so by taking the facts into account, it has to be a B tier. But there's no stigma revolving around stall when it comes to Mutune. In fact, all Mutune does is damage, and recently it got a way of dealing even more damage. And while it's not used very much, every time it is used, it definitely strikes fear into the opponent. And that, you know, fear and damage, it's definitely something that ranks you high on the hype list. And Mutune is an easy A tier. But its brother Trumbull, definitely the biggest example of a nerf affecting your levels of hype. Everybody thinks things garbage, and when they see it, they don't feel anything anymore because it got nerfed. Now, this thing is excellent in PvP, don't get me wrong, but the nerf, more than nerfing its ability to do battle, it nerfed its ability to get your blood going, and for that reason, I have to put it in a B-. Now, speaking of things that fail to get your blood going, Ferroglyph, it's definitely been something that people just look at and be like, okay. And I mean, like, that's definitely something that would put you low on the hype list, and so I have to put Ferroglyph in C+. Next up, we have something like Seer Knight. Seer Knight was the biggest fear factor when it came to the beginning of PvP. The only counter for a Seer Knight was Seer Knight itself, and that's not a counter, that was more of a check, but as time went on, it started scaring less things, and eventually fell into irrelevancy. And well, I've got to keep it in a B tier. I'm gonna be real; it's definitely something that just exists, but it still packs a punch, and I have to keep it in B tier. Another Loomian that started off really well and fell from grace, Avitross, But what I do have to say about Avitross over Seer Knight is if it gets going, it's definitely something better to see than Seer Knight. So I'm going to put it in a B+ tier. Now I want to talk about another Loomian that went from 0 to hero. It wasn't a recent thing, but Ursul, when it originally came out, was something that everybody laughed at because those stats were ridiculous. It had higher ranged attack than it did defenses, and it has no ranged attacks whatsoever. And then it got buffed, and it started putting in work, and it's something that strikes fear into a lot of people, especially those that like to use plant types. Plant types. And that fear factor definitely bumps it up to a B+ in my opinion. Everything else about it is pretty Chase down's lame, but that fear factor is definitely carrying it to B+. Now, something that basically been untouched since the release of the game, Florant. Everybody's always hated it. It's always been very lame, but it's definitely not as lame as those below it. I mean, its whole spiel is about stalling and recovering HP passively. It's just not exciting. Not exciting in the slightest. C tier. Now, on the opposite side of the spectrum, Revanine. Definitely the complete opposite of Florant. It's all about damage, and it's not bulky in the slightest. However, what does keep it alive in games is that typing, and that typing is sick as frick. Let's be real. Spirit Fire, that's a cool typing, and then Vengeance, you know, coming in for revenge after your ally faints. That's nothing short of sick. That's an A tier Loomian if you ask me. Next up is a Loomian whose abilities are just kind of there. It doesn't really... It basically doesn't even have an ability. Guardrone, it's got a lot of coverage. It deals a lot of damage. But those abilities, they just don't exist. But I will bump it up because that coverage is definitely something sexy. So let's be real. It's a B+ Loomian. Luminami. While it's definitely got a lot of coverage itself and a lot of utility on top of that, and on top of that, it's got an ability it does care about. Power Napper. It could be run 1,000,001 different ways, but when you look at it, it's just nobody really likes looking at it. It's kind of lame, and for that reason, I have to drop it to a B-. Speaking of lame, we've got Seti Mars. It definitely looks lame. And the way it plays as of late is definitely lame. I have to put it in a C tier. I mean, like, it just exists to wall you out, chase down, rejuvenate. It's not something exciting. What doesn't look lame, however, is Tyrex. Tyrex, being a mechanical T-Rex, that's cool in itself. And then its ability, its ways of acting in battle, definitely something better than the B tier and below. I will put it in a B+ tier rather than anything higher because a lot of people have decided that this T-Rex is there to just stall things, and well, that's kind of lame. Tatap, on the other hand, can't stall. It's recently fallen from grace because that plant stab is just oof. But it is a Loomian that definitely. Also, I can't put it much higher because, well, everybody only associates it with flinches, and that's kind of akin to Hunder. However, I still put it above Hunder because of design. So, a B- Loomian. And then finally, we've got Blowtox. And I'm going to keep it in the B tier because it looks plain. However, it definitely acts, the way it plays is definitely a lot more interesting than things below it. So, there you go. The definitive tier list of hypeness. Mutagon and Colossotrops at the top, and then you got, Upsnoozagon, this lame thing, Teclipse being Teclipse, and walled by plants. But yeah, this is it. If you disagree with this list, you're wrong, but let me know in the comments below. And also, in the comments below, let me know, are there any other tier lists you'd like me to make? If so, let me know what kind. And if you like these kinds of videos, make sure to like the video, because, that supports the channel, especially since YouTube hasn't been pushing my videos out to people as of late. So the more people that like the video, the more these videos get pushed out. So, yeah. Hopefully y'all enjoyed, and I'll see y'all in another video. See ya.